Happy
Hello.
Thursday, everybody.
Yes, happy Thursday, and
Man,
welcome.
I love our countdown music. It always gets me bobbing my head when we're
Yeah,
starting.
I
Yeah.
think I want to remix the intro and have more of the countdown and less of the front. I don't know. I feel like we need to use AI to make a new intro, but
Oh, absolutely. You
yeah.
do everything with AI. I don't know, but I don't you change our pretty faces. I love our pretty faces.
No. I mean, like, I don't know. Maybe some more. I don't know. I like the count. Like, yeah. I like seeing you kind of jamming out backstage before we go live. So like, I gotta get more time on that. So
Yep.
maybe
So,
next week we'll have a new countdown. Probably not.
hey, I'm
But,
always looking for change and what could be fun. I don't know about you. It's another cold, snowy day here in Colorado. I
oh
think,
yes.
yeah,
Very much.
we were backstage. You had some, snow day issues going on.
Yeah. Ooh. It's another snow day, and then I'm also compensating with the severe frigid temperatures by expanding my home lab to heat my house, I guess, even more. So anyway,
I was fixing to say, man, with your home lab, there's no way that you've got a cold house. There's no
yeah.
way. You could probably
Well,
got neighbors coming over and putting their hands on your walls just to get warm.
well, it's not quite there yet, but I did just I am in the process of commissioning my first real server in the home lab.
Nice.
So I'm going up a step, and if you follow me on Twitter, Mastodon, or Blue Sky or LinkedIn, I've been kind of documenting the process. So you'll see some pictures and things of that nature. But it's a quad GPU super micro AI workstation slash server. So they call it a workstation, but that thing's so large, I don't know how it would be under anybody's desk. And it's
Man.
also has, like, the server fans, aka it's not very quiet. So um, definitely something for a data center-y type deployment, not under your desk, so to speak.
Quad
So
GPU.
yeah.
Man. All right. Well, you heard it, everybody. If you ever need to, go fund me, you want to hit Nick up. He's got a big wallet.
Well, I mean, I got a really good deal on the eBay junkyard scene, so
Yeah.
but I'm always looking for deals. And
We'll
then
have
we'll
to
have a
talk about that offline. eBay always makes me nervous.
no. Well, I mean, we could have a whole show on Nick Nick going through eBay listings. I don't know.
I'm
But
with you. Yeah, I'll be honest. The one time I got scammed on the internet was through eBay, and I've been hesitant ever since. But
well, I mean,
that's that was my ignorance.
well, yeah, I think Home Lab navigating the navigating eBay for Home Lab junkyard purchases, tips and tricks, or something. I don't know.
Well, I mean,
But
you
yeah.
can't deny. I mean, we look at what you've got for a home lab going on. I mean, you're what? You're the fifth data center for Broadcom, yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't know if that quite official yet, but we're
You'll have
working
to
there.
excuse me, Nick. I'm still getting over a little bit of a cold that I caught last week, so I'm going to cough on you. I apologize. I'll try to mute before we do it, but
No, it's okay. You can cough on me virtually all day if you want.
that's
But
right. Well, until you get sick and you'll blame me.
yeah. But I guess yeah. So I mean, for this episode, I kind of wanted to do just kind of we've done a lot on the GenAI tile and the kind of GenAI in general. We actually had a really great episode last week about the model context protocol with Kurti and Corby. So if you want to, like, that's kind of like cutting edge agentic AI is another kind of phrase coined with the model context protocol. So if you're like interested in that type of stuff too, you could check the previous session episode out. As well. And then we also kind of have this whole kind of sub track within our channel about all the AI sessions. But it kind of came up where I was getting pinged a couple of times about how to deploy certain sample applications we use to test out the tile on Cloud Foundry. And one app that we use all the time is called Open-WebUI. And it's really like this open source Python app that people wrote. I think it really kind of started out with one individual, and it's kind of grown and into this kind of community thing. But it's kind of really used in the I don't know, local LLM or local AI scene a lot. And you could pair it with Ollama pretty nicely, deploy it pretty much on anything. But it runs really well on CF, and it makes a great kind of this chat GPT like feel an application, and you can kind of, it's great to wire that up to your application. So I kind of wanted to go through actually installing it. We've shown it before a few different times on the show, but never like, here's what you need to do to install it. Here's maybe any kind of special settings you might need to apply to your Cloud Foundry environments, what models to use, what models not to use. We could even kind of dive into some of how we're doing different inference engines and things of that nature.
Cool.
So yeah, that was kind of my thought for this episode.
No, that sounds great. And I was looking at and we'll, for anybody that doesn't see it, we'll also put this in the show notes as a link. But I was kind of looking at the GitHub page for this. So it's mostly Python, right, with some Vue. Mm-hmm. But this is a big app. This is a big repo. And you're saying this runs on Cloud Foundry.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we dig into this code, we'll be pretty delighted how easy it is to look at it. And we'll go a quick shout out here to Keith Lee. I actually did invite him, but he couldn't make it. It's pretty late his time this evening, and he's having some internet troubles here. So thanks for watching again. But we'll get Keith Lee back on the show sometime here in the future. And really, too, I think I put this in the show description, but I'm hoping that this really kind of starts out kind of like a how-to mini series as well, or how to do certain things, because we do a lot of different demos and things, but we show kind of like the end result, not how we get there. And some things may take a while, and like maybe we can have this kind of mini series, or we maybe even start I don't know. We'll have to talk with Nikki behind the scenes of how do we take this forward, but maybe even more frequently, or like it's its own kind of special time slot, so to speak. So
anyhow, we could take in, how to set up, make sure you've got a development environment set up for it that works well, that's got all the tools you need. I think there's a lot of things in this. And I do want to say, Keith, I was real excited that you were going to be on the episode. I'm bummed you're not here, man. I always want to see you and talk to you on the episodes on the show. So I'm sad you're not here, but I'm glad that you're still watching. Next time. We'll get you next time, Keith.
All right. Yes. I probably should get my screen going. How about that?
Well, it always helps. It helps the audience follow along when they can see what you're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is the classic StreamYard problem. How do I share my screen?
Excuse me.
Entire screen. Screen 2. All right. Let's do this, and we're going to get an Inception here, I think. Oh, no. I can share it without presenting.
Oh, the anticipation's killing me. Cool.
Right. We have Inception.
You do have a little bit of Inception. That's awesome.
Let me pull this away so we're not infinite looping. Okay. All right. I'm going to do my classic side by side. Are we looking okay?
I think you're going to need to expand just a little bit on your VS Code.
Oh, I will. Yes. Boom, boom. So clear.
Perfect. All right, I can read this now. Anybody in the audience, you're having problems with this, let us know in the chat. We'll expand. But for me, this is looking good.
Awesome. Okay, and you let me know if I need to zoom in anything. Just feel free to interrupt.
Will do.
Okay, so if you look, actually, too, I have a repo here. Let's see here. So we have a little repo here at GitHub where we're kind of storing some of these sample apps, and I've started to put some updates in the documentation and some of the guides about what we're doing with things. Keith's actually been helping out as well. I think we'll see more of Keith in this space as well in the future. He's been great just in documentation and just scripting things and things like that. So I think he's going to be helping out a lot here too as well in some of this updated documentation and scripting and kind of expanding some of these examples. So I'm excited to see that as well. But we talk Open-WebUI, and if you just Google Open-WebUI, I think the main page is here. I don't know. This is kind of like their landing zone site, but this is some of their community page, and here's kind of like this. You'll see this as like one of their little canned examples, but there's all kinds of tutorials of how to set all these things up. We'll just be scratching the surface of like what you can do with Open-WebUI. There are, all different types of things to do. And even some of the, it's still under very active development. So there are things like where I wanted it to map it to like an S3 storage, because you can upload documents and things of that nature. So Like if you're running your own, if you have S3, like, this is using AWS or whatever, but you could probably use a S3 compatible storage of, there's different types. Like I like to use Minio. There's other types of that as well.
Mhm.
I'm going to try that out as well going forward, but we'll kind of get into that till later. But, this is a great little open web, a great UI to experiment with all these models, and you'll see that kind of in the future. But just kind of wanted to give a shout out to their main page, and um, happy that they're providing this to the community, and we're doing our best to help make it work within the Cloud Foundry space.
Yep.
Okay, so we go back
And
to
I
our
will
code.
mention one of the great things about this, it can be, you can Dockerize this. You can,
Mhm.
because we support, Python directly on Cloud Foundry, you can just deploy it just like that, which I think that's what you're going to walk through, right? It's just that
Yeah.
deployment straight onto Cloud Foundry. All right.
Yeah. So some of our colleagues attempted to Dockerize it or push the Docker version of it to Cloud Foundry, but it was just kind of like, Long kind of took a look at it. It's like, hey, we have the Python build pack. You can just push the Python app directly,
Mhm.
and that was a lot simpler process here. So I guess I'll expand this. Do you think GitHub or VS Code is easier to look at the actual source code here?
I'm a big fan of VS Code. I
All right,
think a
let's
lot of
go.
people know it, but everybody knows GitHub as well.
Let's do this in VS Code, and I'll zoom in more. All right, so essentially here we have very few. If we look at the actual, like this is the repo we expanded here,
Mhm.
and I have other repos in here because this is my like my root of my full example app here. But we look at the runtime here. We just we're just going to specify a Python version to use. You may have to tweak this version depending on what version of Cloud Foundry and what Python build pack you're using. We just recently bumped this up to match the current version of the what's running in Tanzu for Cloud Foundry. Snooze. Hopefully, I'm getting to push the security update. Hopefully, that doesn't reboot my machine during this. If I just
Always
disappear,
when we're trying to do something
yeah.
live.
So
Always.
it's like, okay, I'm just gonna like build a dedicated streaming machine just for the show now.
That's right.
Requirements.txt. So essentially, this is where we're calling the app. So like Open-WebUI is like a PyPy package as well. So you can just do like Python install Open-WebUI. We have things commented out here in case you needed to lock a certain version of Open-WebUI. It changes frequently. Back in the, I think like VMware Explorer days, we were using this and they pushed an update and it broke something. So then we had to like lock it in place. So we recently just unlocked it. But if you wanted to pin it to a certain version, you could just simply, comment this line out and replace it with, equal whatever version number you would like. I think 0.5.15 is the current version. So this
Mhm.
obviously 3.15 was quite some time ago. And I'll show up the release page in GitHub too. You can see what's going on here.
So when you just do the Open-WebUI call at the top, that's just going to go and grab. That's like at latest, right?
Yeah, precisely. Yep.
Yep.
All right. README. This is our little README here. We'll show that in GitHub, but this is obviously we added that to help, like, hey, this is how you create some services with the GenAI tile. I've got a little architecture diagram, just some very simple markdown. The proc file, it's just so it's an Open-WebUI serve. So again, this is really if a few lines of code to actually push this into Cloud Foundry. And then we have our manifest here where this is obviously the part that's specific to Cloud Foundry, where we're giving it a name, disk quota. We're passing env environment variables to it. So there's certain things where they have many flags that you can pass to it. And we're doing that, obviously we're disabling WebUI false. You can hook this thing up to like your identity provider and make it like, use your, your like LDAP or your SSO or whatever service to like log into and things of that nature. You can, you'll see there's so many things here to dive into. And then instances in memory. I haven't tried running multiple instances of this. It would probably work out. We may get some weird session state things, but I know there's ways to hook it up into Valkey and share the databases like within Postgres. So like always in the future plans of like how can we like we have those services within Cloud Foundry. I'm pretty sure we could wire those up pretty easily, and like use PG Vector for embedding support, Postgres for like the actual user database, and maybe some state database, and then like caching and session state maybe for Valky. So
Well, let's back up a second. So you talked about, so Open-WebUI has the ability, it's got a built-in auth to it that you can wire up into your own, like you said, your own LDAP. What are your thoughts? Because we've got authentication that's built into Cloud Foundry. We've also got the SSO tile that can be used, and a lot of teams use. What do you think on recommendations? Do you want to go with something that's built into Open-WebUI? Do you want to use Cloud Foundries? What do you think there for authentication on this?
So I think now the SSO tile should work, but we'd have to do some testing and things because they support a lot of different auth backends, like identity provider backends. At the time, we were testing this. A colleague and myself were testing this like later last year, and there's something about with how the Cloud Foundry SSO worked and how they expected like a format version, like it was like email or like user ID was like there's like a mismatch there, and I am by no means an expert in identity, and I'm sure someone who really knew the SSO space better could probably just fixed it easily. But it was one of those like I spent maybe 15 or 20 minutes trying to make it work, and I was like, it's not working. I'll move on, type of thing. So,
well, let's throw that as a challenge. Anybody in the audience, if you want to play around with the SSO tile, get this working. I think that would be, and whatever you find out, I think it would be a good comeback to the show because authentication is an important part. So which works better here, the built-in authentication that's in Open-WebUI or using what's built into Cloud Foundry? I think that would be a good cross comparison. If anybody out there wants to take on that challenge, let us know, and we'll bring you on the show to talk about what you find out.
Yeah, perfect. And then last but not least, we have this, the dot profile. Let's call it the hack, right? So this, Open-WebUI doesn't know anything about VCAP services, right?
Right.
It doesn't have that, the CF env for Python in it or anything like that. So, however, there's kind of like this known hack where you can do a dot profile thing with like with some of these languages, like especially with Python, and essentially parse VCAP services from the Cloud Foundry environment through the service binding, and then export those as environment variables to try to like dynamically load this manifest file on the fly. So this is probably like the majority of the work to make it work in Cloud Foundry and have it cleanly work with the service binding. So when you do a bind service within the marketplace, the Open-WebUI knows how to pick it up and map it without like manually hacking the strings and things. So here we have some, and even here you see where this is where I was experimenting with trying to make it work with the SSO service. I suspect we could probably, like, if we get like Findsy on here or something, he could probably make it work in 5 minutes type of thing, because he knows that quite well. But and then even you could even potentially front it with Spring Cloud Gateway and all these things. It's a feature.
It's a feature, never a hack.
Speaking of Findsy, thanks for watching, and
you heard him. You heard him, Findsy. He called you out. Let's see if you can get this working. Maybe you'll be the first one to meet the challenge that we put out there.
And by the end of the show, he'll be like, "Here, do a git pull, see the new example." And then also, so we're gonna kind of loop through what's provided from the GenAI services. We're also looping through if we wanted to pass embedding endpoints as well, because you can give it different endpoints to like chat, models versus embedding models. And a lot of people use this this app to front locally to front Ollama on their machine, because like Ollama really doesn't have a UI, right? You can interact with it via the command line and like pull models and like have a little like fun chat via CLI, but obviously that only goes so far. So I think even originally this app was kind of built to sit on top and sit at front Ollama. So we're actually going to disable that, so we're not making those Ollama calls directly, because we don't have that set up, because we're calling the GenAI tile in the actual AI server directly because we're speaking the OpenAI compatible API endpoints, right? So we're using that path for this deployment, so to speak.
Okay.
So we can parse VCAP services. There are a lot of new things that we could add, like part of document support. So I think we can kind of hint at the knowledge bases and things where you can have a bunch of knowledge bases and have it pull in like an S3 bucket full of I don't know, documents about your company and do RAG on top of that. And then you can use that knowledge base and pass it to the models and do questions and things. So I can show a little example of that as well. And then
one thing I always thought would be neat here, right? We put,
Mhm.
a lot of companies are putting their documentation for their products out on GitHub now. But being able to sync that repository into, like you said, your S3 bucket and being able to answer questions on your documentation through AI, I always thought that was a really cool use case and something, hell, maybe we should get together, Nick, and do something like that. Because I think that would be really great to have that front end to say, hey, we've got all this documentation. And trust me, anybody that's out there that's known, I think the Cloud Foundry documentation is really good. But there's a lot of links. There's a lot of things that get you moving along. Being able to summarize that up and give you an answer based on AI would be a lot more efficient than trying to dig through the documentation.
Yeah.
Free use case.
Yes, I like it. And then some of that too kind of hints at even if we go way back when we had Dr. Wu on the show, our friend David Wu, he was doing some of that too with some of the Cloud Foundry docs directly. And a very early on, like we're talking about a year ago, that's 20 years in the AI space, right?
Right.
So, and then obviously here we're going to load our platform certs. So that's useful if you have a self-signed certificate. So the Python app knows about the certs and knows how to load it, and then essentially calls these two functions, and then boom, ready to go. So mostly we were just kind of parsing the dot profile file to see how we were kind of injecting VCAP services into this kind of pre-baked Python app without really modifying it, right? Because we're not when I first saw this, I was like, I pinged Long and I was like, where's all the Python code? I don't see it. I see one line. Surely that can't be it. And he was like, yeah, that's all you need. You do this requirements text to pull the Open-WebUI package, and then just run the Open-WebUI package. So quite simple. Now, before we get into exploring here, I'm gonna take my screen off for a second. And then I am going to make sure I'm logged into the right place.
What, you don't want to do Deshaun show all your secrets during a webcast?
It's probably not recommended. I don't think anyone could get to any of these endpoints I'm calling with because they're all either behind my VPN or, other VPNs and things. So they're not publicly exposed, but I'm just, trying to not do something silly.
So with this being deployed, and I think you kind of touched on this, but want to jump in again. So with this being deployed on Cloud Foundry, using your databases, Postgres, is it as simple as just tying it in and doing a create service, or is there other things that have to happen as part of this?
So yeah, it would just be the create service. So, man, I'm jumping ahead. Thanks.
You are.
Yeah.
That's all right. That's what I'm here for, Nick. You get so excited about this stuff. It's like trying to hold back a racehorse when you're talking about AI, man. So I'm just throttling the reins a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, can I do this? All right, here we go. All right. Yes. So, Zoom. Got a Zoom.
There you go.
All right. So we're in Apps Manager, right, which is kind of the Tanzu GUI for Cloud Foundry. And I have all these. I'm going to go into my org, my AI sample org. I'm going into the spaces, right? Classic Cloud Foundry hierarchy that makes it so successful. And then we're going to go to. I'm actually going to use demo here. Let's make a new space.
Cool.
Let's do that. CF Weekly. How about that? Let's make a new space. We'll hit create. And there. All right. And maybe I need to go and number. All right. Perfect. Okay. So CF Weekly. going to go in here, and I have no apps and I have no services. But and if we go to the example, well, and we're going to kind of deviate a little bit from the example just because we might, I don't know. I guess we should probably follow what's written just for sake. You could use the CF CLI to create these services. I'm going to go and use the UI just for ease of use here, and I guess document that process as well, in case people don't know how to do that either. All right, so we're in CF Weekly. Let's see, services. I'm going to add a service, and this is where I'm going to add those models that we can use with the Open-WebUI. So I'm going to use. So we actually, if I guess quick aside, we'll go to Ops Manager here. Right, and we're going to just kind of take a quick peek at these models here, and we can come back to them. So I've got 4 models, and I've got Gemma, Nomic, Mistral, and a Quen coder model. So I got 4 models here that maps to this situation here in the marketplace. So I think we're going to deploy 3 of them, and then kind of go from there.
Yep, and while you're doing that, so when we're talking about the Ops Manager UI, for those that are using Cloud Foundry, the Ops Manager UI is generally not something the developers are going to be able to see, right? That's where your platform engineers are coming in. But I do like, Nick, that you show this is where you're getting what's seen on the marketplace is dependent on what your platform engineers are setting up for you. And if you see something that you need and you don't, they're the first person to talk to. So go talk to them. They can, probably help you get that set up. But I like the tie in between what the developer sees versus how it's actually provisioned for the developers to use on the marketplace. Yes. Good call out.
Perfect. All right. So I'm actually only going to create 2 models because I learned like a pro tip today that I want to demonstrate.
Cool.
So we're going to make two models, and it's already saved me so much time. And Long probably would just yell at me and say, I don't know how you didn't know that, but it's okay. And then, so I've added the Gemma service, and now I'm going to add the Nomic service. So these 2 models are only on CPU as well. So again, I had someone recently ask me if the GenAI tile supports CPU, and I'm like, yes, we do. So just a quick reiterate, we can run models on CPU, and now these are smaller models. They're not these large, super high, the super high billion parameter count, but you can see they actually work out pretty well. So just a quick aside. So
I love that comment, by the way. Wu would probably tell me, how did you not know this? Oh, I'm sorry, Dr. Wu. But I didn't know something that you know. My bad.
Yeah. So anywho, we got the 2 models. And if we go to my manifest here, so if you haven't, if you haven't seen the CF manifest stuff, we're going back to, we're going to make a name for the app, and we're going to say Open-WebUI -CF, and I'm going to add weekly, right there, because I already pushed this to the foundation, and it would have a conflict of the name, and that's all we're gonna do. And we've commented out Mistral because I already had that there, but I'll show a little pro tip here later. And let me do a CF apps. I think I'm already in this demo space. No, I made a new space. So CF target space CF -weekly. All right, clear. I don't know if I'll pull the terminal up so you can actually read it. It's probably super squished.
So looking at your manifest there, disk quote is 6 gigs. So with pushing this, is this something that it feels like you're probably going to have to make some adjustments to defaults on this to be able to push it? Or
that's a great question. Let's get this push going, and then we can go over and
all right,
because that's the one thing. This app is quite large. It does take a while to push. If you are in a situation where you have unreliable internet connection, I wouldn't recommend it, because I think the payload is over a gig, like the droplet size. So like the app itself, it's a very large Python app. So it's, I think it's like 1.1 or 1.2 or, above a gigabyte in size. So it's got to pull it. It's got to push it. If you're in a situation where your bandwidth limited, I wouldn't suggest just because you're going to be pulling and pushing, pushing a lot of bandwidth. So just a caveat there. CF apps, right? All right, so we're in the CF Weekly space. Let's do CF services. All right, I've got my 2. It's a little squished here, but you can kind of see
it's readable.
Yeah, I've got my 2 LLM services that I provisioned via the marketplace, and everything's wonderful there. But let's just get this push going.
So I'm going to throttle your reins a little bit more. So explain to real quick, you got 2 different services. What are the 2 services for?
All right,
We
so
can read it and kind of guess, but
yep.
let's be descriptive here.
The Gemma service is going to be our chat inference model. So we're going to use Gemma 2B, and that's running on CPUs, and we can dive into that worker. And the Nomic model, it's a model that's like geared, purpose built for doing embeddings.
Okay.
And that's nice to use as well, because these embedding models are much smaller than like the main models as well. So you can use those on CPUs as well. And it's just like, hey, how many different types of workloads of this AI stuff can we offload to CPUs? Because we know pretty much every Cloud Foundry install on the planet has probably a significant portion, or it has a significant allotment of CPU memory and disk, right? Because they're whatever version of Cloud Foundry you're running. We know Cloud Foundry supports many different infrastructure as a services, and like kind of like the base requirement is to have a some type of like x86 processor right behind this. So how can we make the most out of all of those deployed across the globe, right? So those models are going to be run on CPU. We can get to see how Bosch is deploying them and things of that nature. But we're going to have a basic chat and some embedding services kind of off the fly. And we do this with Spring Music too. But that's a different app to show kind of how Spring AI works and things of that nature. But this is when we get more into this, we'll have like lots of models here, because then it's great to test things out and say like, how does this new model work with this type of question? Like that, that type of thing. Anyway. Okay, so let's do the push here and get that cooking. So I'll clear my terminal to see a push, and see. Okay, should be good. All right.
So let me ask you another question on this. So with the way the Cloud Foundry works, as you were talking about with with the CPU, we all know that CPU is a measure of how much memory you get. Is this something that you got to play around with pushing the app? Does this have a very CPU? Is this a CPU intensive app where we would have to artificially increase the memory to get more CPU for it? Or does it work pretty well with what you got with 2 gigs?
It works pretty well, really. And so this app itself isn't very CPU intensive.
Right.
You'll see that it's going to be making calls to like backend models and things.
Okay.
So that in itself is not really like, when we're doing these AI calls and things, the things that are getting hit hard are the actual workers running the LLMs.
Gotcha.
Right? And that's not this app. It's just really the front end for those.
So you really need to be looking at scale on the models that you're deploying with the GenAI tile, not necessarily the front end app itself, the Open-WebUI app itself. Since It's just making calls, there's not a whole lot of tuning you need to do there. But you may, as you get further along in this process, you may have to do some tuning and some looking at your back end models and what you want to set those up for.
Yeah. Now, if you had a lot of people hitting the Open-WebUI at once, it could potentially then need additional resources, and that's where you'd want to get in, like you'd want to sub out the in-memory disk storage with a proper like S3 backend or some type of data store. Right. Because you could, like, when I upload documents to it, it's just in memory. So that app crashes, I lose that document. That's not ideal, right? But it works for a demo type purpose, right?
Okay.
So yeah, obviously, and I don't know if anyone's using this for like within their own company of like, hey, we use this and it's like our front end for testing models, and we hooked it up to all these different things. Like one of our customers in with the GenAI program here in Tanzu, they were using this kind of internally as well. We kind of, this is one of our POC kind of apps as well. We use just to kind of kick the tires, but they were definitely exploring different ways to integrate it within some of their systems. I don't know how far they got with it in terms of like exposing it to their whole developer community. But you turn this over to 1,000 devs or something, you might want to start scaling and looking at some of those type of concerns. Okay. So while we're pushing, do you have a question? Sorry.
No. I was just going through, like I said, as people start playing with this, want to point out maybe any caveats that they need to look at. Like we said, there's going to be this is a large app. Your defaults may not necessarily work for the droplet size, but along the same lines, what do you got to look at for tuning as you start getting into this and things to look for? So that's all I was getting at.
Yeah. So we'll talk about that here right now. All right. So yeah, and you haven't seen this. This is Ops Manager. This is how we kind of manage all things here at Tanzu and all the cloud, especially all that Bosch powered Cloud Foundry bits and things. So we'll go into the small footprint for Tanzu Application Service. That's basically the mini version of our CF deployment. And we can go into the app developer controls. I believe this is the screen. So this is where we're talking about tweaking some of the default settings. I don't remember what the default minimum is now. The default setting, but the min of 1024, you're definitely going to want to bump your droplet size up. I bumped it up to the max. I think you could probably be okay at like 2048, like basically like 2 gig.
Right.
But on another kind of tip that we could kind of, I guess, briefly allude to is that if you wanted to potentially, if you're working in an air gap situation here, you can potentially host your own, like if you were downloading offline models like for Ollama, like a GGUF file, if it's small enough, you could potentially host it here as well within Cloud Foundry. So via the like we have the static build pack, like the like essentially a web server build pack. You can host that as just on Cloud Foundry itself, and you would probably want to make that, but it's got to be under that 5 gig droplet, otherwise it wouldn't push as an app. So that's another thing you might want to just consider, making it as large as possible. And then the maximum package size, I bump that up as high as possible as well. I really think it's really about the droplet size in general, but those are just some things that you might want to tweak. Like if you have an older version, an older CF install, I know, I don't remember when there was a release where it was like the community specifically bumped it up to 5 gig for large Python apps. Like, I think it was like, I want to say 2 or 3 years ago, I remember kind of covering that in the releases of Tanzu Application Service, but I know that's a CF setting within the community. And when it hit the open source, I don't know, probably, but this is it finally dawned on me. I was like, man, somebody's out there has got some really big Python apps. So I was like, now I have a really big Python app I use, and I really appreciate this feature coming out, because otherwise we wouldn't have been able to push it to the platform. So now I guess if it ever gets over 5 gig in size, then we're going to have some problems, but I don't think, I think we definitely got some wiggle room there for sure.
Yep.
All right, so yeah, you can tell, right? This is a long push, right? So we're gonna keep pushing here, and while that's going, and if you've ever done a CF push before, this might be like one of the longest CF pushes you have, because what my machine is now like, if you look in, I guess I could just go to PyPy and I'm not a Python developer by any means of the imagination. I guess PyPy, the Python package index, and if you look for Open-WebUI. Here you go. Yeah, so last release 8 hours. You can kind of get in like behind the scenes, and if you wanted to, you could pull these packages, and you could vendor them. Like there's a way to vendor all these packages and like install them all locally on your machine. And then when you go to push it, instead of trying to pull all from like PyPy essentially, or the sources on the internet, you could just push those files pre-staged. I was getting close to working with that. Again, I had some kind of weird, it was missing some weird dependency where I couldn't get it to push correctly with my version of my vendored code. So if I figure that out, I'll update the repo with a guide. But if you're like a Python person, you probably know how to vendor those packages probably pretty easily. And I am not super deep into Python, so to speak.
Which will help with the download, not necessarily helping with the upload, but at least you can cut part of that time down.
Yeah, that's true. So yeah, it helps by not having to pull these all the time, right? Like, I need to I want to repush this with I need to push it again. Well, yeah, I should figure this out, just because it would make this demo go like much faster, and especially if I'm like on conference Wi-Fi. Uploading it will still be a problem, because I'm going to be remotely uploading it somewhere mostly. But yeah, it's just it's just something to be concerned, or not concerned, but just keep in mind as a great app, but it's not necessarily something that you're going to want to do on sketchy internet. Okay.
Yeah,
That's kind
this
of
is
what's
one of
up.
those use cases for ephemeral dev environments, right? Where you could
Mhm.
have all these. You don't necessarily want to hold all these packages on your laptop. You might want to put these into a dev environment that you can go into that they're already pre-staged,
Mhm.
but not taking up your laptop space.
Yeah.
Because when you start getting into some of these, yeah, vendoring helps, but you still, at some point you got to look at keeping those up to date. You got to look at how you want to do that. So, maybe that's something we talk about in a later episode, how we could possibly go through and do some of these things.
Yeah. Now, if you give me a coder environment that like does my Python stuff for me, I'd really like that. So
I know a guy.
okay, well, I don't know. Hey, what? And then also hey, if it's hosted remotely too, I don't have to worry about my actual environment. Like I'm on
Sure.
like super sketch conference Wi-Fi because those never not work. Um,
Yeah, I didn't want
right?
to steal when you were talking about if you've got low internet, right? You don't want
Yeah.
to necessarily do this. I didn't want to jump in and steal your thunder about, well, there's ways around that, right? You can build these things out, put them in the cloud where you've got the super fast internet to be able to do it. The only gonna, kind of limiting link will be what the connection is from the cloud back to your environment. But if you're
Hmm.
running your environment in the cloud, you're talking, server to server here. So one of those things I think we need to explore in a future episode.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll pencil that in because I'm interested in seeing how we can
Cool.
make this better. But anywho, and now once you get to this stage, so it's like downloading NLTK corp not found. That's okay. That's normal. I have no idea what that means, but so again, I don't know. You're getting close, right? It's download all the files and we'll start uploading. But while while we're baking,
That's one of the things about developers. Hey, yeah, we're getting this error message. It works, so
yeah.
ignore it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I could easily Martha Stewart this and and that's what I typically do when I use this app in demos because I can't be like, well, hey guys, here's a CF push, one command, boom. All right, let's all go eat lunch to come back and then we'll be ready. Like that wouldn't be the best look,
Yep.
right? So that's why we pick some of these smaller apps to demo first. But if we go back to our samples here, or our CF Weekly space, man, now I want like some Chipotle or something. Anyways, side note, I started thinking about
I,
food and now
I
I'm hungry.
wasn't hungry until you said that.
Yeah. Some guacamole and some chips.
So while we're
Anyway,
waiting for this to download, let's talk about some of the other things, right? Some of the other benefits here. So
yeah.
Open-WebUI, it has, all the tie-ins to public models, Anthropic, OpenAI,
Hmm.
but running this on Cloud Foundry. Again, what's the benefit of running this on Cloud Foundry versus, running it against your open? It's going to be the protection of your data.
Hmm.
Especially when you start talking about putting things into S3 buckets, you've got a lot of things out there that maybe you don't want to release to the web. You don't want to accidentally release to the internet. So why build this on Cloud Foundry? Why build this even in your own data center or in your own public cloud spaces so that you can control that data? And
Yeah.
this is one of the things where the GenAI tile, by providing those models, it allows you to do that.
Hmm.
Open-WebUI is giving you the front end. What else am I missing, Nick? I
Well, I
mean,
mean, yeah. So I guess we can always talk about like sovereignty control of your data when talking about AI. Now we had talked about all right, it's going into the droplet stage, so it will be
woohoo!
done soon, maybe in a few more minutes. But so like DeepSeek came out and we had this hullabaloo about DeepSeek, and then they were running what was strange kind of because like DeepSeek was out for a long time. They've been releasing models like decent, like good model, like they're definitely competitive in the model space. I still don't quite understand why the general public picked up on it, like and somehow the DeepSeek app went to like number one in the App Store, which I think everyone who's been working in this space is still kind of like puzzled how that happened. But they essentially were then giving away like this very competitive model, and I believe still are via the App Store and whatever. Well, that Wiz then came out like a few days later, and they basically were like, "Oh, this isn't good." Like they were able to just kind of like walk into that all that infra, serving all that the UI, the web UI, and everything that fronts these models, right? That their Chat GPT like experience, and we're seeing all kinds of logs and like sensitive data passing through, because they had some kind of I don't remember what it was. It was an exposed like data endpoint of some type, like maybe a messaging queue or something. But
Mhm.
you know, some type of log stream or message queue where you could like see all these messages flying back and forth. of this, probably exploded overnight web app were exposed. But that was like the front end to the actual DeepSeek model, and then they got hit like from a security perspective, right? And I don't want to go, there's all kinds of like security about, sovereignty of data and like politics, and I don't want to get in there, but from a information security perspective, they essentially had some pretty wide open doors on exposed, and data was being passed back and forth. So that's why they got a big bad rap about security of like, hey, well, like they were running a SaaS service, and the SaaS service was kind of exposed of like, hey, it's not super secure, and now we have lots of people using this, and issues potentially. So this essentially is, if you're running to kind of run this within even your own home or your own enterprise, you could deploy this app, and that's that front end layer that was exposed is all under your control, and then you can control where all those queries go, whether they go to public models, So there's always going to be, if you're going to send questions out to those models, there's always potential risk there, but you could control like the embeddings and like all that stuff within your own four walls as well. Or if you have access to like local models via like what we're building with the AI tile, that's all completely protected, right? It's not going anywhere. It's within your four walls. You can fully air gap it, and then go from there. And that's, you have to vendor in these Python packages first, and then push it from air gap workstation. But
well, we talked about this
kind of
with last week, right? Responsible AI goes beyond just making sure that you're giving correct answers back. It's making sure that you really look at the security of how you're using the models and what you're doing, what you're passing back and forth. There's been a lot of high profile cases of things that have went wrong with companies using public AI, but not using it responsibly. And, I'm a huge fan of, if I can control the data, if I can keep that within my data center, that's something I want to do, because it secures my company. It secures my job, right? I don't want to have to go to my CISO or my CEO and tell them why I released public secrets that shouldn't have been out in the wild because I was trying to make jobs easier with AI. So, responsible AI, beyond just how you use AI, it also goes around the security and what you're doing there. Again, big fans of bringing stuff on, within your data center. This is where GenAI really excels. And hey, we're up and running. So I'm going to shut up and let you go on now.
Yeah. Huzzah. The CF push finished. I don't know if we have a time stamp of how long that took, but if we play it back and analyze the film after the scene, we can calculate the push time. But it ran. It's running. So yeah, it's using about like, and that's also why I had that disk quota up to 6 gig. It's using 3.5 gig as storage right now. If I started pushing some documents up to it, it'd grow. One time I tried to upload a video to it by accident and crashed the app because it immediately ran out of local storage. So again, if you don't have it configured to like a local or a external data source, you could crash it. But maybe this will be in the next episode, because we're already 49 minutes in. I was like, oh, we've kind of just scratched the surface here. So we'll have to probably do a deep dive of advanced things that you can do with it too. But we'll go into.
Well, and I think you're already giving out a best practice, right? If you really plan on using this, probably tying this into local storage would be better than using, your disk quota.
Yeah. So I've got a Midio. I've got some homework to do to try to attach it to Midio, and then like I wanted to get like some documents and things. But anyway, well, let's get into the main app first, and maybe we'll have a advanced 201 session on this later. So we'll go in here, we'll load it, and we sign a little, update a little message of the day, like what's new in Tanzu Platform. You can change this to whatever you like. And here's the release note. So we just pushed the latest version. So we're living on the edge. I don't think I've ever tested this version out, so it could be full of bugs. And if we have to, we can fall back to 5.14, which was working a few hours ago. So I like how, when you push it, you're getting the full logs of like, hey, this is what we did. And these are like matching the GitHub commits and like release notes. So like props to the Open-WebUI team. They document their stuff very, very well. So yeah, this thing can do like web search. I don't even know what the playwright stuff. They've added Azure Storage as a provider. They started adding Jupyter notebooks and code execution in here. Lots of things you can do in here, basically.
I am interested in the web search functionality. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Now I don't think I have it hooked up to anything, but again, brand new feature. So we'll see.
Hey, this is the art of the possible. It's not everything you can do with it.
All right, so okay, let's go. All right. So it defaulted. There's a setting to change the default model, but let's go to Gemma 2 because if you ask it an embedding model like chat questions, it's gonna have a real bad time. Um, so and then two, just to
Not my
on a side
job,
note,
man. Not my job.
yeah. Hold on, I'm gonna get into some shell here too.
So very reminiscent of OpenAI, of ChatGPT interface.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like this is kind of and two again like all of these like SaaS AI providers, these public models, they have to have some type of web infrastructure like this to provide said service, right?
Mhm.
And not only do you have to worry about their web infrastructure being secure, like or insecure, like DeepSeek's was, and then you also have to worry about like what are they doing with the questions on the model side once it goes through all this web infrastructure, right? Um,
Oh,
yeah,
we missed Sneal here. Defense in depth, especially for unproven tags. So missed
yeah,
this when we were talking about the security stuff. 100% agree with you. Always be security conscious, but even more so when you're doing something new.
yeah, exactly.
By the way, welcome to the episode, Sneal.
Yeah, thanks for watching. All right, so I'm going to clear and I'm going to run this command again. All right, so I'm in my ops manager. I'm looking at all my different models I'm running on the back end here. So we have 4 models, um, and we have 4 models here. Now I need to find. I'm going to actually pull this off the side here because I lost some of that. All right, I made it too big. I was word wrapping here. All right, I believe this model. So here we can get into what's going on behind the scenes as we start to ask questions and things, and we might not get too far. Well, I guess we can go a little over too. We got a pretty good live audience right now, so thanks for
Yeah.
watching. And all right, so we're gonna talk to the Gemma 2 first, right? This is the Gemma 2 2B version. This is actually using an example of an air gap. So I have pre-downloaded this GUF file, GUF, or however you like to pronounce this, and that's a format that Ollama can speak. And so I'm hosting that. I'm actually in this environment. I'm just pulling it directly from Hugging Face. So I've told what specific model to use in the SHA-SUM. You could pull this, like wget it within your environment, host it on a local storage like an S3 or a file server or whatever, and then have the model will pull it there as well. So essentially, when I've activated this part of the tile config, it is not going to go try to pull directly from the Ollama library. So I guess this is a pro tip too. If you're not doing the model URL portion configuration, this model name is important because it needs to match something within the Ollama library because it's just going to follow the default flow of Ollama, try to go to the Ollama library and pull whatever model. So, Gemma 2 2B is really kind of more if we go, let's just go to the Ollama library here. We'll share that really quickly.
This is an important tip. This was one of the things that I got stuck on by not getting the name exactly correct that you had to help me out with.
Yeah, so we look here. We're on the Ollama library. Oh, sorry. Just locked my screen here. I'm not sure what happened. Am I still here?
Yeah, you're still here, but yeah,
My
we lost
screen
your
died.
share.
Yeah, 1 second. That was crazy. Entire screen 2. Hot corners for the fail. All right. There we go. So yeah, we're back to like if we look at like what's on the Ollama library directly, I want to go to the Gemma 2 2B, and I can see tags here. I'm like way zoomed in, so it's not even fully painting here. If we go to the 2B, we can see you could do like a Gemma 2 2B here, and that would pull because that's like it's like think of like these Ollama tags, kind of like Docker tags. You could do Gemma 2 latest, but then you're gonna kind of YOLO what parameter you get, and I wouldn't advise that. And then you can kind of get some of these more precision, these different quantization level models as well. So I think I'm pulling directly here I think it's the Q6 if I remember the 2B Q6, but I got that GGUF from Bartowski. We we could probably spend 30 minutes talking about
I was
tPCF
fixing to
files,
say, I think just
right?
going through and being able to explain what this means is a whole other show for
Yeah.
people that are looking, because it's very easy to get confused when you start going out and looking at these models and you're just bombarded with 15 different thousand things coming at
Yep.
you. So
Yeah, and
keep
we
that
did
in
it.
mind as well.
And Tim Leong and Feinze kind of went into that tirade on our DeepSeek episode a few episodes back. So
Yep.
if you want a little bit more deeper dive, thanks for pulling me out of that rat hole. We'll go on here. So anywho, we've got this Java 2 model. It's using one of our pre-provisioned files, but it's on a CPU large VM. So I want to find the CPU large VM, and I believe it's this one. So we're gonna boss SSH in this VM, and we're gonna just like watch it, right?
Sudo. I want to expand that up a little bit hard to read either.
Yeah, pro tip here. Let's get some HTOP going. All right, so this is a 14 core machine. I think, let's go to Info tab because I don't know exactly what I set this up here. Another thing too, all these different infrastructure profiles are tied into the model. So you make custom VM types in Bosch. Another thing too, I think, actually we were doing a presentation to a customer, and they're running Ollama things within like a container runtime like Kubernetes, and they're having some problems with CPU performance. And I think another benefit here, what we're doing here is that we're provisioning dedicated VMs to these models,
yep.
Whether they be on GPU or CPU. And I think that really helps out because one, we're Bosch is a VM level orchestrator and a many things level orchestrator. So we're running it like native as like a executable. We're not putting it through another container runtime via this service. Cloud Foundry itself has its own container runtime. It's more that that's where you want, in my opinion here, that's kind of where you want your container scheduler to be in the ephemeral app space, right? And Open-WebUI is pushed to container on Cloud Foundry. Yep. But when you have these environments, like you need to maybe kind of fine tune these VMs, right? If you're going to get some type of predictable and like usable performance out of the CPU, because if you're then going into like, let's say Kubernetes or really anything else, you're adding another layer of scheduling conflict. And if you're using these machines like they're like they could be, you're going to have a bad time in the scheduler because those containers are going to be just like crashing the system, like thrashing, so to speak. So I don't know.
And that's, you're trying to get me onto a rant here as well, right? So a lot of good uses for containers, a lot of good uses for K8s containers out there.
Yeah.
But VMs are not going away. Sometimes, the best tool for the job is something that we know, and it's a VM. And I think we could go, again, this could be, I'll shut up because this could be a tirade, but, really look at what you're using and pick the best mechanism to do that. Don't get caught into this loop of everything has to be containerized because you could be doing yourself a disservice.
Yeah. I mean, it makes it really easy to deploy, but down the road, when you want to go to production and run something at scale, you're gonna have a real bad time. You know what I'm saying? All right.
And I'm going to throw you another idea here. So we're kind of going back and forth between two different things. We're talking about what this looks like from a developer perspective, but we're also looking at what this looks like for getting this out there from a platform engineer perspective. So one of the things I think we should do, Nick, is take this up and let's do this from a PE perspective versus a dev perspective and walk through that in different ways. So, you've kind of went through the walk of the GenAI tile, but really doing a deep dive into what these things means. Here's how you get your stuff so that the platform engineers can divide that to developers, I think is a whole other show. And I think is very important. And then we can go into, okay, now this is all out there. Developers, it's in your marketplace. How do you make best use out of it?
Yeah. Yeah. So I know
by the way, we're planning shows on the fly here and we've got like 4 ideas already.
Yeah. So I know we're definitely close to our normal time slot. So I'm going to I just want to show this is what we're doing within the CPU space. Got 14 CPUs, 32 gig RAM.
Yep.
It's a dedicated VM to this model. I'm in that VM on the right hand side in HTOP land. I'm in here. Let's say hello. Can you tell me a joke? Right. All right. And then another thing too. Ollama hasn't loaded this yet, so it's going to load it. So that first query you hit, it's going to be a little slow because it's loading it and going there. We're just gonna get that going here for a second. Yeah, it's starting to wake up here. So, and you can kind of see too, we had a big spike in the CPUs, right? So this is, a relatively small model. It's loaded in memory, and we are processing, right? So again, another use case of like, if these things can't respond in like that type of big bursting traffic that just happened is definitely not great in a container scheduler land, right?
Right.
And especially if I kept like now tell me another joke
So
about
now you said that
cats.
initial load. So are we going to see a spike like that, or we only see a spike like that, like you said, when we see the first interaction?
Yeah, so like see how it's like it's really kind of going through here, and I told it to ask me a joke about cats and pirates. And that was actually pretty quickly here too.
Mhm.
And I didn't get a tokens per second here. There's a flag to enable that as well. But I need to set that too. But that first hit it was basically pulling from disk to memory. So that was just the speed of like my storage to DRAM speed. And that's
Right.
typically pretty fast, right? But there's just a big hit of that. And if again, we went back to that DeepSeek episode, and we were doing some things with some of the smaller distills, but after that, I was able to run the full in my home lab, the full 671B, but that was like 400 gig of RAM. So like it took a while just to pull. Like we're talking about, even if you have super fast NVMe storage to go to RAM, that's still a lot of data to pull. So
Right.
that first hit, you got to prime the well, so to speak, with Ollama. We will probably there's a flag to set where you basically set it to like not destage and maybe kind of we could pre-prime it, so to speak. But that's another feature kind of Ollama will destage things to save resources as well. So just to, what's going on there. So we're talking. The cat replies to the Sligren, Captain Whiskers, and he's afraid of scurvy dogs. Sure, let's hear another pirate cat joke. I don't know. Oh boy. Why did the pirate cat cross the road to get to the other side of the ship? Yeah. Okay. All right. I think I should probably stop that thing. But you can see like that was it's a relatively small model, sure.
Yep.
But we can use that model with an app like Spring Metal and get like pretty good results. And we're using those embedding model. And again, the machine I'm running it on is on a Broadwell based system. So that is like way officially end of support by Intel, and I'm pretty sure based on my eBay Junkyard Wars, eBay Junkyard Wars. That's another. Sorry, like you could buy the CPU that I'm running on for like $20 US, and definitely well in the e-waste situation. I don't think anyone's running Broadwell based systems anymore in any kind of data center. So you're most likely on a much newer generation of processor, whether that be Intel or AMD. The Epics are really kind of really taking the scene here too. So you're gonna have a good time on a more modern system. But you could show it working quite well on a rather old system too. So anywho, and then the new system I'm doing is based on Cascade Lake. So I plan to do some kind of comparison as well. And I think maybe once we bring Chris Phillipson back on, we'll have some notes around that too, because I was doing a lot of work with that with Chris with one of our customers. But anywho,
Excited to see what you and Chris came up with. I'm excited to see what Chris is doing with Sanford. I think that was a big deal.
Yeah.
I would like to, get a kind of a thing going between him and Corby, who we had on last week with CF Pulse, get CF Pulse showed as well, because I thought that was very cool. But we're coming up on end of time. So we know we're going to have to do another one of these, Nick. What are we going to do next time?
I think next time we want to show some of the more advanced features. Like let's do document store. We can do vision models. You can even do like text to speech stuff.
Okay.
And things like, yeah. So we barely just scratched the surface. So I apologize if this is way too long winded, but
no, I think this is great. This gives the example of how this gets deployed. We've got that episode out. So, this kind of walks you through if you want to deploy this on your own Cloud Foundry environment, how to get it running. Next, we go into, okay, now it's deployed. What can we do with it? I think it's going to be good. And I want to remind everybody, make sure you hit the subscribe button.
Yes.
These AI episodes, people are eating them up. So make sure you hit subscribe and like so that you know when we're coming out with the next episode. Keep an eye out for us on LinkedIn and on the Cloud Foundry Twitter page, as well as Nick and mine. And we'll get a lot of these links that we put in here for the GitHub and all these things into the show notes so that you can follow along with us as we do this. But I think, hit while the iron is hot. I know we've got an episode planned for next week already, but I don't think we want to go too long between this one and your next advance. Let's keep people rolling on this, Nick.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do. I will. I got a lot of homework too to keep up, and we'll try to any updates we'll try to do to hit update the repo we're running. Because but yeah, if you're out there, you're using Cloud Foundry and you want to play around with this stuff, I think we got a pretty easy way to get started. And you have a kind of a safe your app layer tier, and then obviously if you're within the VMware Tanzu family, you can get access to our GenAI tile that we've been building, and the two together kind of make a great pairing, so to speak. Anywho,
it's all about making life easy and simple. You've got Open-WebUI, you've got the GenAI tile, you've got Spring AI. There is a lot of different ways that that the Cloud Foundry is really trying to make AI simple for the developers. So, again, we welcome your questions. Reach out to us on LinkedIn if you got questions. Reach out to us, excuse me, on Twitter if you got questions. Sorry about that. I'm just trying to die here on the live episode. But first and foremost, like and subscribe. These episodes are coming out every week. We want to make sure that you're notified of them. And we put the challenge out there. Hey, can somebody do something with SSO on this? Go out there, meet the challenge. Let us know, man. We would love to have people that are playing around with this come back and tell us their stories and what cool things that they're doing.
Yes, very much so. All right. Well, do we have any closing thoughts?
No.
How about this? Any recommendations for our listeners?
Well, I think
Cote does that on a software-defined talk show, and I really like that. So,
I mean, I'll just totally, go out with a deed, right? The best way to get started is just to get started. Start doing stuff. Take the same approach that we did to this podcast. Don't try to plan. Just go out and start doing something. The only way to move forward is to get the wheel spinning, and the only way to do that is to actually hit the gas. So, if you got questions, I know me and Nick we're out there to answer them. But get started. Come back and let us know where you get stuck. Maybe we can walk you through. Maybe we can come on and do that live on the show.
Yeah. And I guess my recommendation for the show would be, if you're looking in the eBay junkyard, scrapyard wars, whatever you want to call it, I kind of just channeled the Linus Tech Tips series. PC server parts, you look them up. They're like a legit seller. If you have questions, let me know. I'm happy. I would know if you have I do this a lot internally, but like people will send me builds and things and like have me have them check it out, so to speak. So if you're interested in getting some gear and you just want someone to do a once over before you spend a little bit of coin, happy to help. And yeah, PC server parts, I guess I should put a link in there. I could probably find that here really
I'll
quickly.
make sure that we get it in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
So, when we doctor up the show notes, I'll make sure that we put that in there. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that's always kept me from building a really good home lab is cost. So I'm actually excited to start talking with Nick and seeing where he's getting all this, for GPU hardware for something that he considers a good price.
Oh, I've got the link here, right here. I'll put it in the streamer chat.
Okay.
I think that could be another episode. Nikki builds a home lab.
Nikki builds a home lab.
Yeah.
Right. I need something to rival and counter Deshaun's Pi army. So
yes. Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna have hundreds of real servers and I'll have hundreds of Pis. So we'll figure it out, right? All right. Well, that I guess we'll close it up. Thank you for all the live listeners. It's been great having you here. If you haven't seen our show before, check us out. cloudfoundryweekly.com. This is in podcast format. You hit it on your any favorite podcast subscriber, and then subscribe to our YouTube channel, and that's a great way to stay up to date. Well, sure. But are we ready to close it out, Nikki?
I think so. Until next Thursday, I think this is good for this week. Man, good episode, Nick. Always fun to watch you start talking about AI. Can't wait for the next one.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, with that I go. We'll do our 3, 2, 1. See ya. Bye. We'll close this out.
Whoa.
3, 2, 1. See ya.
Bye.